I play smarter. I invest with Morning Line. You build your stable. When they race, you earn. Buy, sell, trade, anytime. Morning Line. Own the game.
Hi, everyone. David Aragona and Mike Beer here taking a look at the DRF Saturday race of the day, which is, of course, the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Classic, going the 1.25 mile distance for the 3-and-up runners, the crown jewel of the Breeders' Cup. But, Mike, this race took a big hit earlier today when we heard about the withdrawal of Sovereignty. The heavy favorite, the most anticipated horse that was supposed to be running this Breeders' Cup weekend, will not be running, but still an interesting race to handicap. Still plenty of interesting Breeders' Cup races to dive into, and you do want to do your handicapping with the daily racing form. So check out our DRF packages at shop.drf.com. We got 2 of these packages going. Clock reports included in the VIP package, but you can also get the player's guide, betting strategies, plenty for you to peruse. Shop.drf.com or use that QR code on screen. You can save $38 of the value of everything included in these DRF Breeders' Cup packages. Like as I just said, big hit to this race as Sovereignty comes out. He was going to be the strong favorite. He was a horse that people are really looking forward to seeing cement the greatness that he hinted at all through his 3-year-old season. He's not going to play. Hopefully we get to see him on the racetrack again, but this is still a very intriguing Breeders' Cup Classic, and the focus now really shifts to the top 3 finishers from last year.
Yeah, it's still a strong classic overall. I mean, it's a real bummer that Sovereignty is not going to get to step up here and face some really good older horses, but it's still a really good field overall because, as you mentioned, you have the top 3 finishers from last year. Mindframe steps into the mix here to try to, prove that he really belongs at the top level. And without Sovereignty, I guess you got the, second and third and maybe even the 4th best 3-year-olds in the country in this field.
Yeah, Journalism and Baeza, who've been knocking heads against Sovereignty to no avail earlier this year. They got away from him here, but they're not facing an easy task, stepping up against those 3 4-year-olds from last year who were 1, 2, 3 in the Breeders' Cup Classic. Let's take a look at the pace projector for this Classic because, Mike, one of the big storylines coming out of the 2024 Classic was how fast the early pace was and how it set up so perfectly for Sierra Leone to win the race. Remains to be seen if he's going to get a good enough setup for Sierra Leone to be successful here, because when this race was coming together in the last couple of weeks, it was feeling like there wasn't a whole lot of pace signed on. So not surprisingly, Chad Brown decided to enter Sierra Leone's Rabbit in the race, the number 4 Contrary Thinking, the pacemaker that was used in both the Whitney and the Jockey Club Gold Cup this summer. He's going to run in this Classic, and it probably does change this pace scenario a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he's in here to provide pace. We'll see how fast it goes. It'll be interesting to see how this race really does shake out early, David, because I don't think too many of these riders are going to be worried about Contrary Thinking wiring this field. So, last year's pace was kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, it didn't seem like necessarily it was going to be that fast. You had a couple of long shots just roll out there and set a really fast pace. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen this year.
Yeah, Contrary Thinking, not shown leading on the pace projector. He is going to be in front as long as he breaks cleanly. Forever Young, the pace data on him is limited. He's only had 2 starts in the U.S., so that's all it's based on. And one of his races was that very fast-paced Breeders' Cup Classic. That's why the pace projector is overrating his early speed a little bit. And Mike, just a brief question about fierceness, who we'll get to as we start the conversation with the contenders in just a second. I think this will be a great spot for him to slot into behind the leaders, because he's showed in recent starts that he runs his best races when John Velasquez can sort of get him shut off early. And I think the one fear with fierceness is that the Rabbit rushing up outside of him from the starting gate could almost set him off early.
Yeah, we'll see how Fierceness deals with it. I think you're right. I mean, I think there's a real chance that he just falls into a great trip in this race, breaking from the rail. He's going to go forward. Assuming he just lets Contrary Thinking clear him on that first turn, he can maybe just slip right to the outside and do a perfect pace tracking trip.
Everybody, if you want to handicap this Breeders' Cup Classic along with Mike and me, you can get free past performances for this race because it is the DRF race of the day. You can access free PPs on the race of the day page at DRF.com for this and every single race of the day, Classic, Formulator, and Timeform US. Let's go through the discussion of the 9 contenders that remain, beginning with the number 1, Fierceness. As we were talking about, he got that great trip, covered up early, and then bursting through in the middle of the backstretch of the Pacific Classic last time. Let's take a look at the replay of that race. Now, Mike, a lot was made of the start of this race, because coming out of that small chute for the 1.25 mile distance at Del Mar, he veered into the gap for a split second before John Velasquez corrected him and got him back into position. But after that, I really did feel like Fierceness got a great trip sitting in behind the pace, and that move that he made halfway through the race to take it over, you could see that the old Fierceness was back coming to Del Mar.
Yeah, exactly. It was the good Fierceness in the Pacific Classic last time. Aside from the small little hiccup there at the start, he just had a perfect trip. He was better than those horses. He looked like he was better than those horses through the stretch of that race. It was a really nice performance. Not something that we haven't seen from this horse before, David. When he's good, he's really good. But you always have to ask yourself, how reliable do you think he is? Especially Sovereignty is out. He is 5-2 now on the morning line. Maybe he even goes favorite in this race. How much do you trust this horse? Because if nothing else, he has proven to not always be trustworthy.
Yeah, prior to the Pacific Classic, it seemed as if his career might be coming to its end because he had run so disappointingly in the Whitney. And Mike, I got to ask you, there's so much been talk made about him drawing the rail again for this race after what happened last time. Is that a concern for you that he's drawn inside?
I mean, not just in its own right. It's not just on that, that fact alone. I mean, personally, I think having the rail, especially when you have tactical speed and 2-turn route races, is the best post position that there is. Now, maybe it's not the best one for Fierceness, but I would worry about Fierceness if he was drawn in 1 or 5 in the middle of the field. If he was drawn outside, I'd be worried about him because he is not a trustworthy horse. And I would also just point out, there's a little bit of talk too about how much he loves Del Mar. He ran great here last year. He ran great in both Breeders' Cup races out here. I don't, or in the Pacific Classic, I don't care about that stuff, David, because Fierceness was also really good at Saratoga until he wasn't this year, and they showed up in the Met Mile and the Whitney, and he was terrible both times.
The number 2 is Baeza, one of those 3-year-olds that remains in this field, Mike. And he was beaten by Sovereignty 3 times in a row through the Kentucky Derby, the Belmont Stakes, and then even came back to Saratoga to try him again in the Jim Dandy. Got closer, but was no real threat to Sovereignty in any of those races. Gets away from that foe here, coming off a confidence-building win last time in the Pennsylvania Derby, where he beat a good group of 3-year-olds. Not the best 3-year-olds out there, but I liked the way he did it, Mike, making that big move from off the pace. And maybe this is a horse that's putting things together at the end of the season.
Yes, it seems like he is. I liked his Pennsylvania Derby win last time. I know that a lot of the top 3-year-olds weren't there, but I liked what he did there, and I particularly just appreciated that it felt like another forward move for this horse. It just seems like that's the way he's been trending all year long. He wasn't as put together as some of the other horses, Sovereignty and Journalism, come to mind, but you could see him figuring it out race by race, and the last one was the best one yet.
The number 3, Nevada Beach, another 3-year-old in this field. He is, outside of the Rabbit, the least accomplished of all the horses in this race, even though he's a Grade 1 winner last time out in the Goodwood, not the strongest Grade 1 of all the horses that are coming into this race off prior Grade 1 wins. He did beat a good horse in Full Serrano, but probably one that doesn't really want to go the 1.125 distance. I mean, Mike, this horse has been progressing in every start for Bob Baffert. He is biting off a lot more than looks like he can chew on paper. But I mean, we'll see, because he is a horse that might have the aptitude to take another step forward here.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he improved. I might be surprised if he was good enough, even if he did move forward, to come out on top in this race. But I have no knocks really on any of the 4 races that he's run so far. I do think he's pretty good. Obviously, he did, he ran down a distance challenged horse last time, but it was still another move in the right direction for a horse who could be forward in here and is going to be a great price.
The number 4, Contrary Thinking, he is in this race for one stated purpose, and that is to go to the front and provide some pace for Sierra Leone. Something that we don't see that often in this country, but it is tactics that are used all around the world, pacemakers to set up main runners for the barn. And Mike, I'm just curious to see how much he opens up on this field early. He doesn't have a chance to win this race, obviously, but I'll be curious to see if Florent Geroux sort of opens up 2 lengths and tries to draw some others into setting a faster pace than they want to, or if he just airs it out early and opens up 6 on this field.
Yeah, the tactics are going to be pretty interesting. As you point out, it doesn't matter, really what he does. Although, we'll see how it affects some of the other horses in there. He's not a great gate horse, but once he does get out of the gate, he's fast. They'll send him off to the front in this race. And, listen, he's, ostensibly in here to help Sierra Leone, but he helps other horses in this field as well.
The number 5, Forever Young. We've only seen him 2 times in the US, but he has traveled all over the world to compete at a high level. He won the UAE Derby prior to the Kentucky Derby, ran really well when just missing behind Mystic Dan and Sierra Leone in that run for the Roses as a 3-year-old. Came back for the Breeders' Cup last year, Mike, and didn't get an ideal trip or ride from a tough rail post position where he was probably too close to that fast pace. Still ran a really game race that day. And his 4-year-old season, it's been a little bit up and down because obviously he had that disappointment in the Dubai World Cup. But I mean, Mike, let's not forget that 1 month before that, he ran maybe one of the best dirt performances that we've seen out of any horse all year when he ran down Romantic Warrior to win the Saudi Cup, as those two horses looked like they really threw it down while that turf rival was handling the dirt, and Forever Young came and got him anyway. Got in a perfect prep in Japan last time, and he could set a very good trip outside of Fierceness here.
Yeah. I mean, all those things are true, David. He's obviously really good. I feel like I don't have a good handle on this horse, and I don't feel like I've had a good handle on him right from the start. He is one of those horses who there was just so much talk about him even before he came over the Derby. I think my natural inclination was to be contrary to it all and to try to find ways not to like this horse. I've kind of gotten there. I mean, he has run well in both of his starts stateside for sure. I don't know that I look at either of them and feel like he had huge excuses, although I understand people who take those positions. I don't know. I think he's good, but I don't think he's better than, a handful of other horses in this field. I could certainly bet him at the right price. Pretty sure that I did bet him in the Breeders' Cup Classic last year, and he ran fine. I don't know. I like him, David. I don't love him. I want to see what kind of price he is.
You know the thrill of picking a winner. But instead of just running to the window for a quick payout, I play smarter. I invest with Morningline. Morningline is a more sophisticated way to use your skill and bankroll without putting it all at risk. Build your stable. When they race, you earn. Buy, sell, trade, anytime. Keep the action rolling without burning your bankroll. This is playing the ponies, elevated like a boss. Morningline. Own the game.
We'll obviously skip over Sovereignty, who was declared out of this race on Wednesday morning, and move on to the number 7, Sierra Leone, the defending champion in this Breeders' Cup Classic, trying to make it 2 Classic wins 2 years in a row. We'll take a look at his victory in 2024, where, as we said earlier, he got that fantastic pace setup. But, Mike, it's not like the race just fell apart for him. He actually made an early move to the half-mile pole, getting in contention by the time they were midway around the far turn, something that we hadn't really seen Sierra Leone do up until that point, and we really haven't seen him do much of it since then, where he tends to leave himself a little bit too much to do in plenty of his races. Got the right trip here. We'll see if he can work it out again. Maybe the rabbit's going to help, but he did have a legitimate excuse last time in the Jockey Club Gold Cup.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he was bothered by the jockey that fell off a mind frame in there, and he took him right out of the race early in there. He actually ran fine in there. His Whitney was a really good performance. I'm sort of with you too on his race here in the Classic last year. I know that the pace was there for him, but I thought he ran a giant race in there. To me, the best race that he's ever run. Listen, he's good. He's another one where, I think he's more reliable than Fierceness is. He's way more trip and pace dependent. And so that, sort of makes him a little bit harder to get behind at short prices. To me, he's clearly one of the horses to beat in here. And just one that in any multi-race, whether I bet him to win or not, any multi-race wagers that I play, I got to use this horse.
We talked about Fierceness being unreliable. His stablemate Mindframe, the number 8, Mike, I mean, he's been reliable in the sense that he shows up every time, but he still is a bit of a wild card in this race because you don't know exactly what we're going to get from him because he hasn't run a complete race since the end of June when he won the Stephen Foster over Sierra Leone. Now, he did get a very good trip that day. The pace was with him, and he was able to hold off Sierra Leone, who arguably was a little pace compromised in there. And obviously, his prep was just a disaster in the Jockey Club Gold Cup, where he got bumped off stride by the crowding from the Rabbit and from Phileas Fogg outside of him at the start, and Irad Ortiz and that scary incident fell off him. So he comes into this race lacking that prep and also lacking having answered the question of whether he's really at his best going 1.25 miles.
Exactly. I mean, ideally, we would have had that question answered last time, and we didn't. And so now you have to wait to the Breeders' Cup to get it answered. And so I guess, and in some ways that's a real negative because you don't know. On the other hand, maybe it's a positive because now that it's still up in the air, it could leave him open to being a really fair price in this race. And, at a fair price, I just think he's the kind of horse that you want to stay positive on because I think he showed from limited starts as a 3-year-old that he was one of the more talented horses in this crop. And even though he hasn't quite been able to go on and prove it throughout this year, let's not gloss over the fact that he's already a dual grade 1 winner this year. He won that 7 furlong race on Derby Day. I mean, that might have been the most loaded field of grade 1 horses that we've seen all year long. And he won despite dropping back to 7 furlongs. Then he came back, and I thought he, looked really good winning the Flusher. This is a good horse, and maybe he'll even be a fair price in here.
Yeah, you'll see when we get to picks. I didn't include him in this race, but I definitely thought about him because he's got the raw talent. We'll see if he can produce it despite the unorthodox preparation. The number 9, Journalism. I mean, he's kind of been playing second fiddle to Sovereignty all year. He was second to him in the Derby, second in the Belmont. It looked like he was finally supposed to have his day in the sun against older horses in the Pacific Classic, but he was no match for Fierceness in that race, Mike, despite going off as the heavy 2-5 favorite over his older rival. And I didn't like the way that he was just disengaged early. He dropped much farther back from the main body of the field than you would have expected. And he did get rolling around the far turn, but he was just never really in the same race as Fierceness, who just had the jump on him every single step of the way. And I really didn't like the way that Journalism just shortened the cadence of his stride in the final 1/8 mile. It looked like he got tired at the end of that race. And it kind of reminds you that it's been a long, hard campaign for this horse. They've danced every dance. They ran in every Triple Crown race. And I came away from the Pacific Classic just wondering if it's starting to take its toll.
I think we feel the same way about him. I mean, he's obviously a really good horse, but they've asked a lot of him, and he's for the most part delivered. I thought he was, pretty disappointing the last time we saw him. Listen, and it's not that it's, any, thing to be embarrassed about to be no match for the good Fierceness, because the good Fierceness is a really good horse, but I wanted to see Journalism run better last time. It doesn't feel like he's going to be a great price, even in this Breeders' Cup Classic, David, because he's got a pretty big fan base. He is one of the horses in here who I think can be competitive, but one of them that I was against.
Does the jockey change matter to you at all, Mike?
Jockey changes almost never matter to me.
The number 10, Antiquarian, also getting a jockey change, says his main jockey, John Velasquez, has gone with Fierceness, who was going to be a much shorter price in this race, also going out for the Todd Pletcher barn. And Mike, Antiquarian, maybe he's flying under the radar coming into this race because he has just been getting better and better over the course of his last several starts. And he's proven in both races at Saratoga this summer, the Suburban and the Jockey Club Gold Cup, that he wants every bit of 10 furlongs. And we'll take a look at the most recent of those victories in the Jockey Club, where he was the one that was really unbothered by the trouble at the start because he was breaking in the widest post of an 8-horse field, and all of that bumping occurred among the 7 horses inside of him, and he was the one that was clear of it all, got a perfect unencumbered trip, and was able to run down Phileas Fogg at the end and hold off Sierra Leone. Mike, the 108 buyer, I mean, it stacks up with the best older horses in this field. Just wonder if he's going to be able to do it against the toughest group that he's ever faced.
Yeah, I would worry about that too. Although, listen, we'll see, where he lands, as far as odds go come post time. Double-digit odds on this horse who, does certainly stay the distance, and he stays it despite, having pretty good tactical speed. It's not like he sits and makes one run. He'll be within range of the leaders when this field comes into the stretch, and he will stay the 10 furlongs. I think it's going to be hard for him to win here, but, I've seen way worse long shots than Antiquarian in a race like the Breeders' Cup Classic.
Well, everybody, before we get to the picks, we want to let you in on a secret, tell you about Morning Line. It is a private SEC-regulated marketplace where approved participants can trade licensed interest in racing's biggest stars like Torpedo Anna and Derby Hopeful's Blackout Time. Be part of a championship bloodlines. Visit morningline.io. Buy, sell, trade, own the game. Let's go to our picks for this Breeders' Cup Classic, Mike. And I see you're going to go with the horse that I termed a wild card in this race, the number 8 Mindframe. He's got the raw ability. We'll see if he can do it with this less than ideal preparation.
Yeah, you wish everything had gone according to plan, I guess, on the way into here. I feel like, David, when I first started thinking about this classic, I liked the idea of Mindframe as like the other horse along with Sovereignty. That's kind of how I was viewing him. Now that Sovereignty's out, I'm just going to slot him ahead of everybody else in here because I do think he's talented enough to win here. Do think he's going to be a fair price in this race. And the other 3 horses, the 3 logical ones, Fierceness, Sierra Leone, and Forever Young, they're just horses that I don't fully trust at short prices. So I'm just going to hope that the good Mindframe shows up here and sees out the trip.
Yeah, Mike, and I know you were a big fan of Sovereignty, really going back to the start of the season. So, I mean, coming out to this race, and it certainly affects your picks. I was going to try to beat Sovereignty with Forever Young. He's still my pick, even with him out of the race. Going to get a lesser price than I would have. I got him at 7-2 on the Morning Line, but I'm a believer in this horse. I think he's run really well in both of his prior U.S. starts and got the perfect prep in last time. And I see a pretty good trip coming for him in this race. So 5-2-7-1 for me and 8-7-5-1 for Mike in the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Classic, the DRF Saturday race of the day. Good luck if you're playing the races Breeders' Cup weekend.